thank you so much for joining us for this October Renegade Con. We're so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to be moderating today's Heroscape Roundtable with our wonderful Heroscape devs. Everybody say hi.
Hello.
Hello. I guess we're waiting.
Let's let's do a like quick just, name vaguely what you do, just so that, people who are new to Heroscape, we've got a lot of fun new Heroscape fans coming in, get to know who you guys are. So let's start with Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan Fernandez, and vaguely what I do is work on creating powers and abilities and characters for this lovely game of Heroscape, along with these two other lovelies.
Yes, Rowan.
So, like, how vague? Like, am I obfuscating what I do? So, I also work on Heroscape. I think you're going to hear three similar vague explanations here. Doing powers, abilities, narrative overview, and generally whatever Rena and the other lovely folks on the team ask us to help with.
And Alex.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I do much the same thing, and I'm also basically the project manager for Heroscape. So I try to keep things more or less on the rails whenever possible, and have the privilege of working with two excellent developers to make sure that happens.
Boy, do I appreciate having someone keeping things on the rails.
You
The
know,
unsung heroes of gaming are project managers.
Mhm.
All right, so we've got a really big list of questions. We've only got a little bit of time to get through them all. So I'm going to start just kind of firing them off. Actually, we're going to start with a question that's for everybody because I want to know personally. With the new arcs, we see some figures that fit well with the factions established in Avalon Hill's work. Did any notes or designs get carried over from the Avalon Hill to these Renegade releases?
Yeah, we were given sort of a little stack of notes from Avalon Hill's War Council of ideas for some commons that they were looking into when they were making it. And some of those have been adapted and developed in this current wave. Among those would be the Revenants of Revna were originally, I believe, a Craig Van Ness note and some power ideas there, and those got developed into, I think, a pretty cool unit. Also, the Necrotechs were originally from that sort of pile of notes, and those were fun to adapt and sort of make fit with what else we've got going. Yeah, so some of that did show up.
Interesting.
yeah, I believe that the elites of Ular are
Yes.
also on that list, and there are also a few more original designs that are sort of nevertheless created to fill a niche that might normally be filled by an all-time figure or something that Avalon Hill or the War Council had planned to do to fill that niche. So a good example of that is the Chain Gruts who bond with Vorid, champions and basically allow those heroes to function the way that they were intended to function, which is with a core bonding squad. So there's a lot of reaching back to what the Age of Annihilation and War Council and Avalon Hill designers were cooking up. Some stuff is our own, some stuff is carried on from that, and we also work with very closely with Adam Tarr and Don Zimmerman. They review all the cards, they contribute and collaborate with us, and so the Icenic, I believe that was one of Adam's designs originally, and so he helped us tune it up. It was pretty close to done already, so we just did some balancing and a little bit of adjusting. But yeah, it's a very collaborative process with a lot of different voices involved, and the hope is that we find a way to make that all harmonious and integrated and synergized together.
And you mentioned the chain grut, so I have this question for Dylan. Uh, you talked a little bit about like what led to the creation of them, but or rather, talked about what led to the creation of them, but also like what else like factored into bringing back that iconic species and the new direction and everything that refreshed about them.
Alex touched on the like mechanical idea behind the chain gruts of wanting a bonding squad for Vorid champions, but as it stood, Volarak until now only has had Vorids, and that's, a general should be a little bit more diverse than that. They should branch out a bit from just having one species. So we knew that we wanted this squad to be not just a Vorid bonding squad bonding with Vorids, And one of the coolest things about Heroscape is that it is the battle of all time, and you see units summoned from different points in time from the planet they're summoned from. Mostly we see that from Earth, of, several thousand years of history from, going back to ancient Greeks all the way to 2210 with Agent Carr and the likes of the agents and whatnot from future Earth. You see it a little bit on some of the other planets, like Feylund, you get several different ages that characters are summoned from. But the idea was, let's take the Gruts, which are such an iconic Heroscape species, but they're originally presented as just, warlike and, your classic sort of orc. They ride dinosaurs, they fight, and that's about it. And see what happens if we take them a few thousand years into their future to when they've developed industry and are still riding dinosaurs, but now have, chain axes and more of a steampunk aesthetic that fits with Volrak's Industrial Revolution vibe. And so being able to develop that and take this species in a cool new direction is one of the things that only really Heroscape can do. In any other game, if you have orcs, they're set as being orcs the way they are, whereas we can really stretch that and poke in on them at different times.
So that will we see more Gruts?
Oh yeah.
So Dylan,
Mm.
are there any special powers that you're particularly happy with?
Headbutt. A headbutt sort of just came to me as we were doing a Pachycephalosaurus for the Ramosaur rider, and it was like, well, it's got to have a headbutt ability. And I just sort of wrote that in my notebook that I carry with me of, attack, same as defense, both take wound, and put it into the original document. And then the Ramosaur rider basically went unchanged through playtest. We ran tons of playtests with him. The playtesters ran tons of playtests with him, and they're like, no, he's a perfect baby. We love him. Keep him as is. And so, yeah, Headbutt is probably the power I'm most proud of in this wave. And it's just fun. It's just a silly, fun power for a Pachycephalosaurus, which is a rad dino.
Maybe I think more things in general should have like a headbutt ability. Not even just in Heroscape.
It's the kind of ability we could definitely bring back, so we should keep that in mind. That'd be fun.
All right, this one is it's a two-parter and it's for everybody. So just whoever feels like jumping in first can get it. One of the great aspects of Heroscape is the mix of genres, the three pillars of historical, fantasy, and sci-fi. Although very fun and eye-catching, historical figures were notably absent from the Avalon Hill designs. Are you hoping to bring this genre back into the game? And what considerations do you think are important if/when you do so?
That is a very good question. The answer is yes. In fact, the answer is we have a few historical units in the can, so to speak, that have already gone through design, development, playtesting, sculpting, art, and are, essentially just waiting for production to kick in. So it's on the horizon.
As a follow-up to that, are there any genres that don't quite fall under the three pillars that you would be excited to explore in Heroscape? Anyone?
Fantasy, historical, and sci-fi covers a lot of ground for fiction that you can put in a war game. There are some subgenres that haven't really been touched on that I think would be really fun to add. Sci-fi of the optimistic futurism type sci-fi or retrofuturism would be really cool to see. Something like a Star Trek, a Lost in Space kind of vibe. Or even being able to dabble into representing some Afrofuturism if we consult with the right people on that could be really cool. Things like that would be neat. And then on the flip side of things, I'm a fan of detective fiction, and so getting something hard-boiled into the game would be pretty fun.
I think a hard-boiled noir detective Heroscape figure is exactly what I need personally in my life.
Oh, good.
So
continuing that slope from optimism down, I would also like to see some more particularly horror style things show up in the game. We have some things that sort of touch on it, but I think there's room to dig into the genre a little bit more. So specifically breaking the three pillars down, that there's some room for horror that appears in more of a modern context. I think modern is interestingly the context that is most absent perhaps from Heroscape. We have the past, the future, and the present is a little bit not there. So
yeah,
Yeah, I
Take a
can't
look.
drive my car across the map in Heroscape yet. We gotta fix that.
No, but you can take a tiny helicopter or a trouble bubble. So,
Speaking of the trouble bubble, let's talk about G.I. Joe Heroscape, which everybody's excited for. I'm excited for. I assume you guys are excited about
oh
it.
yeah.
It's all
Uh,
right.
well, then you won't mind answering my first question, Rowan, which
Sure.
is how did the team decide which G.I. Joe figures to bring to Valhalla?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first we asked the Valkyrie generals which ones they wanted. And then from there,
And they
they
turned them
actually
all
picked,
down weirdly.
they
It's
they
crazy.
didn't pick
Yeah, the
any of
Valkyrie
them.
generals were like, nah, they're gonna come through a
No, yeah,
wormhole or something. It's fine. They can just keep following their own whatever.
yeah, they showed up all on their own, just to cause a little bit of trouble. And so from there, since we had to make the decision ourselves, we started with the iconic ones that people are most excited to see. We can't leave Snake Eyes out, right? You can't be doing this without your Cobra Commander, right? So we tried to pick a good, healthy balance of the people that are really pillars of the Joe story at the most times. I know there are many different versions of the Joe story. Here's even yet another. But those sort of pillar characters everyone expects to see get to show up first. But we did leave a little bit of room, for some future proofing. There are some people that you might have hoped to see who didn't make the first cut, but that doesn't mean they're gone forever. So just.
This is for everybody. Uh, how do you think it's going to like affect gameplay, meta interactions with existing maps and figures and things?
I mean, the Joe brings a lot of range to the table, so we're going to see people who are excited to play range pods finally have access to some of that. So they're ranged, but we tried to make sure that they were not without weakness, which is a thing that you have to be really careful for with range and Heroscape. So they we try to make sure the figures rely off of one another, that they have synergies, and that those synergies are also their strength and their downfall in a lot of cases. That you want to try to, if you're playing a melee army, there's room for you to come in and hit them hard, break up the way they want to be formed, and have a chance at winning. You're not just going to get shot apart from a long distance. So I think we're going to see some new archetypes appear, but the Joes are not going to sweep the field, I think, which is the perfect balance that we want them to be at.
I love it. I'm excited. And, we're talking about iconic characters. We're talking about iconic G.I. Joes, iconic Cobra. But Dylan, there are a couple of iconic Heroscape characters making their return in these arcs. Why Savaris and Carr, and how did you come up with these abilities and stats?
I mean, Savaris and Aiden Carr are probably the two most iconic Heroscape characters that hadn't yet made a return as 2.0 figure, essentially. They debuted in that original master set, and they had such a cool like vibe and energy, and they were a ton of people's favorite just from their look or their gameplay, and we wanted to honor them with a new version going forward. And so looking into what that needed to be is interesting because with a new version of a character, in a lot of ways you want to honor what they did previously, but you don't want them to be samey. So, looking at Savaris, fighting the urge to just give him triple attack when he had double attack before was certainly part of it, but we wanted it to be more interesting. And so we ended up with Volley unto himself, which gets that vibe of attacking multiple times, but gives you a different strategic set of questions than you would have with Classic Savaris, where Classic Savaris wants to sit back at full range and plink things and let you try and come to him behind a screen. New Savaris has a push your luck gambling sort of mechanic of the closer you get to the enemy, the more often you can attack. And so he hits hard and he hits close, which fits with Savaris's canonical personality of being an arrogant hothead, where you can play him that way if you want and get him into some messes. And then showing the story has progressed and that he now has an arm made of living vines because he was an arrogant hothead with the wrong Dryan and had his arm cut off and replaced with vines. Don't egg on Halucia. That's a bad idea.
It's good
Generally
advice.
speaking. Did he learn a lesson from that? Probably not. It's the virus. He's not good at learning lessons. And then for Carr, we took Agent Carr, incredibly popular character, and another incredibly popular Vidar character, Dund, the Doggin, who is popular mostly because he looks cool and generally speaking wasn't the most viable character in a game, but was rad, and people tended to pair them together, like thematically, because they both fight for Vidar, and they're both, were a little sometimes underwhelming in armies, and so let's put them together. Let's give them a history. Let's make this cool, wild, weird mounted character, and it needed to respect both of their original designs. So we have some of both of them in there. We've got the light ranged attack and heavy Sword of Reckoning attack from Agent Carr. We have disengage from Agent Carr, but not Ghost Walk because he's mounted. And we have Crippling Glance representing what was a more powerful version of that on Dune. And so these things combined end up with a character that sort of hits both of what they were doing, but is better for being the sum of those parts than either figure sort of would have been otherwise. So that was another fun one to work out the right way to combine those powers.
I love that. And I love like the work that has gone into bringing back these legacy characters, upgrading them, updating them, not even just upgrading them, and like bringing them into the modern Heroscape 2.0 fold. Um, and that does bring me back to the steampunk gruts because I love them. I think that they're so neat. And I know other people do too because it's one of the questions on my sheet. The future steampunk grut is such a cool take on a classic world. Are there any other worlds whose past or futures you'd like to explore more with future designs?
No.
That's it. We're done.
No, we're done. That's
No.
enough.
I think, interestingly enough, Earth might be one of those worlds because we've had a little bit of future Earth in the past. Agent Carr is, an example of that, but he's the only real example of that thus far in, contemporary Renegade scape. So that's an interesting setting. It has its own lore. It has its own situation. Samu comes from that setting. Agent Carr and Samu are, mortal enemies in the past. They're both also in the present on Valhalla. And so that is an interesting connection that we may touch on in the future with more future Earth stuff. And yeah, Nox Dorma has already established a couple different time periods, both eras of which we're keen to explore further. There's future Mar that hasn't been explored too much. There's the cool thing is any planet from the Heroscape universe is a viable choice to either fast forward or rewind. We might see some, obviously Earth has had the most different time units of any planet because we know it very well and we do a lot of historical stuff. But we want to bring that same attitude and ingenuity to other worlds as well. And so we're starting to do that a little bit with Gret. I'm sure we'll do that with other planets in the future as well.
You mentioned Nox Dorma and the two eras that theoretically we've seen on Nox Dorma, but kind of three, because we've got the Vorid and Bears era of Nox Dorma, and we've got the far future destroyed planet Isonek era of Nox Dorma, but then we've got the Necrotech Reavers somewhere in between.
Yeah, yeah. There's a timeline there that's a really really interesting story in and of itself.
Hang on, are the Isonic far future Vorids?
It
Oh
might
my
just be
Yeah.
your mind. Did we just blow your mind?
Yes! There goes my will any other species return to reimagined way? Yes, apparently.
Yep.
Yeah, if you
yep.
look at the Reavers in particular, you can see that they have Vorid-like animal skulls. I believe there's a badger. I can't remember what all three skulls are, but they're definitely references to that kind of semi-humanoid animal
I
creature.
think the skull references we used were Badger, Wolverine, and Polecat, so they were all
That's right.
mustelids, but
Yeah.
variations on mustelid.
That's
Yeah. So yeah, the story of what exactly happened to Nox Dorma is a really interesting one, and we're going to keep advancing that and filling that out as time goes on.
Can we talk about Thorman and the Kraken a little bit?
I would
He's
Oh
love to hear
yeah.
probably
about
the
Thorman and
big
the Kraken.
reveal.
Yes. Let's talk about
Um,
it. Can you walk us through that design process?
yeah, with Thorman especially, we knew he is an icon to Heroscape. He wrote the journals, which is the first piece of Heroscape lore any classic Heroscape player ever read. And so this guy he's been through it. He's seen what war has done to Valhalla. He's seen what summoning things has done to his world, and he's wanted to try and make it better and gotten more and more jaded and stooped to more and more desperate means to try and end this conflict. And so it was a tall order to try and represent him in a way that we knew he had to be very powerful because he has drank from the wellspring. He is a Valkyrie, even if he's not a Valkyrie general. He has the power and strength of one. And then from a mechanical standpoint, we love Heroscape. Like the fact that we have such great, iconic, unique heroes in this game, a lot of times if they don't bond with a particular squad or something like that, they can kind of be left behind in terms of having a good table presence in a list because you're losing out on some order marker efficiency by playing them. So with Thorman and the Kraken, the goal was to make viable lists that were just uniques. We want Thorman to be able to command his ragtag army of unique heroes that he's gathered together to fight for his cause. And so coming up with this ability where he can activate one thing from each general on a round is a great way to sort of balance the inherent strengths of unique heroes, but also give them that more flexibility and variety. And so excited to see the tons of lists that are going to come from that. And then the Kraken is a payoff on the Kraken Wing and having this gargantuan unique squad that's really just one big thing portaling tentacles through, and you can summon it and it gets more powerful as it goes. So the strategy tip for you, if you're facing the Kraken, kill the tentacles as they appear because eventually you're going to get stuck with a really beefy five-figure squad to deal with. So hit them quick.
I really wanted to bring him in because he seemed like he was ready to go, coach. It's like, put me in. I'm done writing. Let's go fight. So it's a huge payoff. It's years in the making. And I really hope everyone enjoys him as much as we do on the team.
And then I think when
But
you
I'll speak
actually
a.
pick
Oh, go
him
ahead,
up,
Dylan.
you'll
Sorry.
get to read his manifesto that he wrote to the people of Valhalla, or well, that Alex Ghost wrote for Thorman, but you know.
Wow, I channeled him. He inhabited me
Oh,
for a
okay,
moment.
yeah.
No, that was really fun because he is a really interesting character. Like he is a character. He's the only Valkyrie who has willingly renounced drinking the wellspring water, which has this. It's hard to give up power, and it's hard to give up power, particularly if you think you are in the right. I think we have some honorable, noble Valkyrie generals in the mix, and people like Jandar and you know, Inar and some of these other, sort of more heroically coded generals. But Thorman is the only one with the presence of mind to say, none of us should be using these things. Look what we're doing to this planet. We need to shut this down. And, the war has been raging for so long. It's caused so much destruction. Particularly after Utgar's defeat, there's still no end in sight because there are still, power struggles. There are still all of these mighty Valkyrie generals who essentially, on some level, want dominion. And Thorman just wants it all to be over. He wants Valhalla to go back to the peaceful world that it used to be. He wants to send the off-worlders home, and he is going to stop at nothing to get that done. He's tired of words. It's time for action.
That's deep. That's intense. That's exciting.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
He's an interesting character. He's fun to explore. He's got a lot going on.
And Alex, you wanted to talk about boss fights, right?
Yeah, that's something that we haven't really touched on yet, but I think is really important to mention. a big part of what we've been doing with Heroscape in, the Renegade era is pushing for more narrative, which means more wonderful narrative scenarios. We've been doing the monthly scenarios that are all part and parcel of a big storyline. We did that big Gen Con showdown between the heroes of Valhalla and Utgar, finally, led by Raylan and Leviatog. And the Thorman box contains another big narrative beat that's a huge part of the story. So Thorman is attempting to end the magic of the Wellsprings forever. He's attempting to channel the Wellspring waters essentially into the void, and shut it all down, send everybody home, and in one fell swoop, the entire cataclysm that has racked his homeland of Valhalla. So obviously, the Valkyrie generals, most of them, not too happy about this idea, and so they dispatch forces to stop him. But it's the culmination of his grand plan. All of the moves that he has been making have been an attempt to somehow end the power of the Wellsprings on Valhalla. And when you pick up the box, there is a scenario in there that you can play, which is a 2 to 3 player scenario, which basically depicts the Valkyrie's confrontation against Thorman in the middle of him trying to enact this ritual. So there's a boss card, there's a whole setup, very similar to the scenario against Utgar. There's a whole canonical way that you can play this out, and it's a fun kind of capstone to that whole story, and it's something we're going to be doing more of in the future, particularly if people enjoy it.
I do love the boss card mechanic. It's not a card you can use in like your everyday games. It's specific to that scenario, but it's a full boss. It's got a second phase.
Yeah, he's tough.
Oh,
yeah.
Thorman's no joke.
It's fun.
fighting a former and semi-current Valkyrie general is no mean feat, to be sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I really liked it too as a space to explore, the real true power Thorman ought to have, because like we said, we want to make him playable in the main game. And so you have to make sure he's playable in the main game, but you can go a little nuts when you do a special scenario to really do him justice, and let him really shine in his natural element there. So I think you did a great job. It's really exciting.
Yeah, thanks. And it helps because Thorman's not, generally speaking, of like full Valkyrie power. He drank from the wellspring a long time ago, but in the boss battle, he takes one last quaff of power in order to get things done. So you get to see him at full strength, and it's no joke. So that was a lot of fun as well. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get a regular pirate admiral Thorman who is fairly well balanced within the context of a normal competitive army, and then you get a very scary version of Thorman who's crackling with all this eldritch energy. He's all juiced up on wellspring water, and that's where you encounter him in the final hours there.
That's
How
so
many
exciting.
points? How many points would you for boss
for empowered Thorman? Gosh, I don't know, 250 maybe. he's pretty
maybe
sweet.
Just empowered version. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. If he's got 2 phases, yeah, it's hard to say.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a lot to digest, to take in, to start planning battles and armies and all around. Do you guys have any closing remarks that you want to throw out for anybody out there? For anybody, maybe.
I'm excited to see all this stuff on the table. We put a lot into these waves. The Joes came out so good. All of the mainline stuff came out so great. I'm a big time Swarm player in any game I play, so I would love to see the score dier on the table when they come out. They're my baby. They're a good old Swarm army. So yeah, I'm just excited to see all this out there. The game is thriving, and I couldn't be happier about it.
I'll just close with a yo, Joe.
Good Joe.
Well, I was going to say that that sums it up. So now you know. and knowing is half the
Is
battle.
half the battle.
There you go. Thank you so much, everybody at Renegade Con for joining us. Thank you so much to our designers for sitting and talking with me. This has been so much fun. And make sure you stick around because there's a ton more Renegade Con where this came from. See ya.
Bye.